my dear students. How are you? I hope all are good. Welcome back to another class. Today, let me start English chapter number 16, Giribala. Have you ever acted in a drama in the school or anywhere? Giribala, having been married in a wealthy family, has no children and hence has very little work to do. She has grown up from a girl into a woman. Yet, skipping through familiarity, her husband's notice, she would often be seen wrapped in a blue silk, walking on her terrace, an impulse of uncountable restlessness. Her limbs seem eager to dance to the time of an inner music, unceasing and unheard. She takes pleasure in merrily moving her body, causing ripples to break out in the flood of her young life. When she was newly married and her husband Gopinath was attending his college, he would often play the truant and under cover of the midday siesta of his elders, secretly come to make love to Giribali. Though they lived under the same roof, he would create occasions to send her letters on tinted paper, perfume, with rose water, and would even blot upon some exaggerated grievances of imaginary neglect of love. Just then his father died and he became the sole owner of his property. There is a dangerous fascination to be leaders of man, to which many strong minds have succumbed. Gopinath assumed the part of a hero among his friends and acquaintances and tried daily to invent new wonders in all manners of extravagance. He won a reputation among his followers for his audacity of excesses, which boded him not only to keep up his fate, but to surpass himself at all costs. From now, his movement took the course that led him in a contrary direction from his wife. In the meanwhile, Giribala in the secularism of her lonely youth felt like a queen who had a throne but not subjects. She knew she had the power in her hand and which could make the world of man her captive. Only that word itself was wanting. Giribala has a maidservant whose name is Sudha. She can sing and dance and improvise verses, and she freely gives expressions to her name. Regret that such a beauty as that of a mistress should be dedicated to a fool who forgets to enjoy what he owns. Giribala is never tired of hearing from her the details of her charms, while at the same time contradicting her, calling her a liar and a flatterer, exciting her to swear by all that is sacred that she is honest in her admiration, which statement, even without the accompaniment of a solemn oath, is not difficult for Giribala to believe. Sudha used to sing to her a song beginning with the line, "Let me write myself a slave upon the soles of thy feet," and Giribala in her imagination could feel that her beautiful feet were fully worthy of bearing inscriptions of everlasting slavery from conquered hearts, if only they could be free in their career of conquest. But the woman to whom her husband Gopinath has surrendered himself as a slave is Lavan, the actress who has the reputation of playing to perfection the part of a maiden languishing in hopeless love and swooning on the stage with an exhausted naturalness. When her husband had not altogether vanished from her sphere of influence, Giribala had often heard from him about the wonderful histrionic powers of this woman, and in a jealous curiosity had greatly desired to see Namanga on the stage. But she could not secure her husband's consent because Gopinath was firm in his opinion that the theatre was a place not fit for any decent woman to visit. At last, she paid for a seat and sent Sudha to see this famous actress in one of her best parts. The account that she received from her on her return was far from flattering to Lavanga. Both as to her personal appearance and her stage accomplishment, as for obvious reasons. She had great faith in Sudha's power of appreciation, where it was due. Giribala did not hesitate to believe her in her description of Lavanga, which was accompanied by a mimicry of her ludicrous mannerisms. When at last her husband deserted her in his infolish infatuation, who is this woman? She began to feel qualms of doubt, but as Sudha repeatedly asserted her former opinion with ever greater vehemence, comparing Lavanga to a piece of burnt log dressed up in a woman's clothes. Giribala determined secretly to go to the theatre herself and settle this question for good. And she did go there one night with all the excitement of a forbidden entry. Her very uh, trepidation of heart lent a special charm to what she saw. She gazes the faces of the spectators lit up with an unnatural shine of lamplight and with the magic of its music and the painted canvas of its sea. The theatre seemed to her like a world where society was suddenly free from its law of gravitation, pointing from her walled up terrace and joyless home. She had entered her regal weird dreams, and reality had clasped their hands in friendship over the wine cup at art of eye. The bell rang, the orchestra music stopped, the audience sat still in their seats, the stage light shone brighter, and the curtain was drawn up. Suddenly appeared in the light from the mystery of the unseen, the shepherd girls of the Vrinda forest, and with the accompaniment of songs commenced their dance, punctuated with the uproarious applause of the audience. The blood began to throb all over Bala's body. And she forgot for the moment that her life was limited to the circumstances and that she was not free in a world where all laws had melted in music. Sudha came occasionally to interrupt her with her anxious whispers, urging her to hasten back home for the fear of being detected, but she paid no heed to her warning, for her sense of fear had gone. The play goes on. Krishna has given offense to his beloved Radha, and she, in her wounded pride, refuses to recognize him. He is eating her, abasing himself at her feet, but in vain. Giribala's heart seems to swell. She imagines herself as offended Radha and feels that she also has in her this woman's power to vindicate her path. She had heard what a force was woman's beauty in the world, but tonight it became to her palpable. At last the curtain dropped, the light grew dim, the audience got ready to leave the theatre, but Giribala said, still like one in a dream. The thought that she would have to go home had vanished from her mind. She waited for the curtain to rise again and the internal theme of Krishna's humiliation at the feet of Radha to continue, but Sudha came to remind her that the play had ended and the lamps would soon be put out. It was late when Giribala came back home. A kerosene lamp was dimly burning in the melancholy solitude and silence of her room. Near the window upon her lonely bed, a mosquito curtain was gently moving in the breeze. Her world seemed to her distasteful and mean, like a rotten fruit swept into the dust well. From now, she regularly visited the theatre. Every Saturday, the fascination of her first sight of it lost much of its glamour. The painted vulgarity of the actresses and the falseness of their affection became more and more evident. Yet the habit grew upon her every time the curtain rose. The window of her life's prized house seemed to open before her, and the stage, bordered off from the world of reality by its gilded frame and scenic display, by its array of lights and even its uh, filmsiness of conventionalism, appeared to her like a fairyland where it was not impossible for herself to occupy the throne of the fairy queen. When for the first time she saw her husband among the audience, shouting his drunken admiration for a certain actress, she felt an intense disgust and prayed in her mind that a day might come when she might have an opportunity to spurn him away with a pump down. But the opportunity became rare every day, for Gopinath was hardly ever to be seen at his home now, being carried away one knew not where in the center of a dust storm of dissipation. One evening in the month of March, in the light of the full moon, Giribala was sitting on her terrace, dressed in pre-colored robe. It was her habit daily to deck herself with the jewelry as if for some festive occasion. For this cosily gazes were like wine to her. They sent vital consciousness of beauty to her limbs. She felt like a plant in spring, tingling with the impulse of flowers in all its branches. She wore a pair of diamond bracelets on her arms, a necklace of rubies and pearls on her neck, and a ring with a big sapphire on the little finger of her left hand. When suddenly Gopinath appeared, reeking with scent and liquor, and Viribala thought for a moment that her day had come at last. She turned away her face and sat sighing. But the curtain in her stage did not rise, and a song of entreaty came from her hero with the words, "Listen to the pleading of the moonlight, my love, and hide not the high face." In this dry and musical voice, Gopinath said, "Give me your keys." A gust of south wind, like a sigh of the insulted romance of the poetic world, scattered all over the terrace. The smell of the night blooming jasmines and loosened some wisp of hair on Giribala's cheek. She let go her pride and got up and said, "You shall have your keys if you listen to what I have to say." Gopinath said, "I cannot delay. Give me your keys." Giribala said, "I will give you the keys and everything that is in the safe, but you must not leave me." Gopinath said, "And it cannot be, I have urgent business." "Then you shall have the keys," said Giribala. Gopinath began to search for them. He opened the doors of the dressing table, broke up open the lid of the box that contained Giribala's toilet requisites, smashed the glass panes of her almirah, groped under the pillows and mattress of the bed. But the keys he could not find. Giribala stood near the door, stiff and silent, like a marble image gazing at vacancy. Trembling with rage, Gopinath came to her and said with an angry growl, "Give me your keys or you will repent." Giribala did not answer, and Gopinath, pinning her to the wall, snatched away by force her bracelets, necklace, and ring, and giving her a parting kick, went away. Nobody in the house woke up from his sleep. None in the neighborhood knew of this outrage. The moonlight remained placid, and the peace of the night undisturbed. Hearts can be rent, never to heal. Again, amidst such serene silence, the next morning Giribala said she was going to see her father and left home, as Gopinath's present destination was not known and she was not responsible to anybody else in the house. Her absence was not noticed. Scene 2. The new play of Manorama was on rehearsal in the theatre where Gopinath was a constant visitor. Lavanga was fraternizing for the part of the heroine Manorama, and Gopinath sitting in the front seat with his rebel of followers would vociferously encourage his favorite actress with his approbation. This greatly disturbed the rehearsal, but the proprietors of the theatre did not dare to anyone their patron of whose vindictiveness they were afraid. But one day he went so far as to molest an actress in the green room, and he had to be turned away by the aid of the police. Gopinath determined to take his revenge, and when after a great deal of preparation and striking advertisements, the new play Manorama was about to be produced, Gopinath took away the principal actress Lavanga with him and disappeared. It was a great shock to the manager, who had to postpone the opening night, and getting hold of a new actress taught her the part and gone out the play before the public with considerable misgivings in his mind. But the success was as unexpected as it was unprecedented. When its news reached Gopinath, he could not resist his curiosity to come and see the performance. The play opens with Manorama living in her husband's house, neglected and hardly noticed. Near the end of the drama, her husband deserts her and concealing his first marriage, manages to marry a millionaire's daughter. When the wedding ceremony is over and the bridal veil is raised from her face, she is discovered to be the same Manorama, only no longer the former Druj, but clearly in her beauty and splendor of dress and ornaments. In her infancy, she had been brought up in a poor home, being kidnapped from the house of her rich father, who, having traced her to her husband's home, has brought her back to him and celebrates her marriage once again in a fitting manner. In the concluding scene, when the husband is going through his period of penitence and humiliation, as is fit in a play which has its moral, a sudden disturbance arose among the audience. So long as Manorama appeared obscured in her position of druggery, Gopinath showed no sign of perturbation. But when after the wedding ceremony she came out dressed in her red bridal robe and took her veil off, when with the majestic pride of her overwhelming beauty, she turned her face towards the audience and slightly bending her leg, shot a fiery glance of exultation at Gopinath. Applause broke out in wave after wave, and the enthusiasm of the spectators became unbounded. Suddenly, Gopinath cried out in a thick voice, Giribala, and like madman tried to rush upon the stage. The audience shouted, turn him out. The police came to drag him away, and he struggled and screamed, I will kill her, while the curtain dropped. So everyone, the chapter is in here. I hope you are a very well understandful chapter. We will meet to the next class. Thank you, everybody.